Thursday, September 2nd edition of the Island Sports Show. I'm joined by co-host Juggling Jason Ford. Well, Jay, obviously we want to start the show off with condolences to the family of the late Earl Townsend Russell, who passed away over the weekend. He's legendary, known for his activities in sports. Everyone talks about his attributes in football, but he was a man of many talents. What did you remember about Mr. Russell?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Russell a few times, and obviously had to sit down with him at his home at Evans Bay. We're down the street from my granny's house, actually. But no, first thing, his smile, and as a humble man, just loving life. But he spoke with nuggets, and I say nuggets because he would say something, and then you leave that conversation and figure it out. Okay, that's what he was talking about. That's what he was talking about. Obviously, I'm a bit too young to remember his playing days, but you knew he was a legend. Growing up around in the PAC family, you always heard about Townsend. And then when Dale came along, then the other Russells came along, and late Tokia Russell, Antoine Russell. So many Russells that came out of that family. But just knowing that Townsend led the way, like he led the path for a lot of these guys, and it was never a sense that anybody had to live up to him, but he always kept an eye on you. One thing I loved about him, and I don't know, like I never got to see him play live, but I always wondered how he did play, because all the other Russells that I knew who played football all had a free spirit. They all played with flair, but they had a free spirit. And I'm only guessing that's where it came from the conversation that I had with Mr. Russell, the legend. I will always remember that because his smile and his firm handshake, I'll never forget.
Definitely. Well, Mr. Russell will be remembered in many ways by several, and we want to send out again condolences to his family and friends.
Yes.
For Mr. Earl Townsend Russell. Well, Jay, earlier today I had the opportunity of speaking with Sean Soboko, who is the tournament director for the Bermuda Championship. Obviously, yesterday there was an announcement that the championship was going to be a standalone event. It approval at the end of October. We'll see many golfers on island. There is an opening for qualifying. China will not go ahead this year. We will get a chance to see some of the top 50 golfers, if they choose to, on our shores. And of course, it opens the door for many household names that would have missed last year, the inaugural year. And Sean was expressing the delight of the possibility of how, although it is a bit of a headache for you have certain protocols that's going to be in place for the event, but also now when you start talking about possibly number 1, number 2, number 3 in the world, it actually gives it another challenge. But he's up to it. He and his team are up to it. We're looking forward to it. They've increased the number from 120 to 132, which is an extra 12 spots, which actually for the first 2 days, it actually adds an hour to the day's play. Last year, we had lovely weather, hoping that the same thing happens again this year. But Port Royal was in all its glory last year, and I know Greg Mabry and his team up there are looking forward to yet another spectacular 4 or 5 days, because they do have a program, 5 days of golf on our shores.
You're absolutely right, and it's be televised. You keep messing up the main thing. It's going to be televised around the world. I mean, the exposure we get from these type of tournaments is just unbelievable. I've been on record saying that I definitely prefer this tournament or this tournament to the Grand Slam. And remember that was just a invitation, and we only had a maximum of 4 players. So I always felt that yes, we got in the door with the PGA, but I think I won't say we sold ourselves short. I just think that it as a sporting fan, if those top names who were invited didn't come, then it really. But with something like this, where now players are playing for points, obviously, also the prize money. And I heard that some extra money got put in the kitty, so that's always a good incentive. But just more people coming to the island, and as a product for the sports tourism side of it, more people coming to the island. So you're seeing 132. So maximum will be for locals. Well, hopefully a local 2 could get in. But just think about now. Just say 100. Even if you go for 100, now we'll probably have to talk about the workforce around the PGA, people that make it happen behind the scenes. Also the television people. What about families and stuff like that? So the people that's coming in, is definitely going to help our economy. Obviously, the job that we've done here locally to help keep the island safe through this COVID period was probably the biggest thing, the biggest factor to even have this tournament period. And to not only that, to instill confidence in these professionals to actually come here. Because, obviously it's all a risk. It's all a risk. But you want, if you're going to go to somewhere, you want to make sure, all the protocols are met. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, number 1, for the safety side of it. But number 2, just have a good tournament.
Yeah, definitely. Sean did explain the breakdown of how they plan to get the golfers around. Last year we had the caddies staying at Southampton, while the players stayed at Princess in Hamilton. This year we'll see both the caddies and the players staying at the Hamilton Princess, and they will be ferried up to Southampton, where they'll then be carted or limousine across to Port Royal. Anyone else will have to they'll have buses and so forth for everyone along the way to get up to Port Royal. But all the protocols, they're working with the health department, they're working with the government, they're working with national security, and to ensure that all the practical things are in place. They've also put in a number for spectators to be allowed in. They're waiting for confirmation on that. He has promised me he'll get back to me in about 2 weeks' time to give us an update on that. And the logistics of putting it all together. They're going to be using a lot more local vendors. A lot of the stuff that they brought in last year is actually still on island. So They probably just need the local vendor to install a rack. They'll still have some overseas vendors coming in as well to do certain things, but they won't need the numbers in which they had last year. And obviously the bigger number will be the guys doing the television stuff. And they've worked out how they will be able to get here, do all the testing and all that. So, they've been meeting for quite a while. And he has expressed, the fact that there's been a team effort in making sure that this event stays on the calendar, because obviously with the China event now canceled, this one becomes the centerpiece. We talked about the increase, because this one is the only one, the increase of media wanting to come to the island to cover the event. Because when you start talking about the top 50, everybody wants to be around in the event that, a Cinderella story happens, just like Brandon did last year. He was a year away from quitting the sport, came to Bermuda and had the year of his life, not just the tournament of his life, but the year of his life, where he won in Bermuda. A week later, won in Mexico. 2 weeks later, he won somewhere else, and then he was always in the running. So, you go from I'm thinking about quitting the sport to winning 3 events in 1 year, early in the year. Set yourself up that actually, you want to go back to and see if you could rekindle that passion, that drive, that relationship that you had with that course to hopefully be able to repeat again.
It's gonna be interesting because you just said it. Golf is so global. That's one thing I love about golf, especially the PGA. It's so global. So you can have top 50 players, but you could probably 50 players representing 20 something countries or 30 something countries. So each one of those countries are want to go to see how their players doing. So just that alone, I mean, it could be 30 different countries that'll be beamed in to watch them play on the 16th hole, which is, a majestic hole. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I'm just saying, how many people in the country who's watching? I'm just looking at countries. So that in itself, it's a great thing, not only for our tourism, but also for our young golfers out there. They get to see these guys they only see on TV or on YouTube or whatever. They get to see them, well, I'm not sure now because of the protocols, if they'd be able to rub shoulders with them, but to know that they were on the island. I say that because many years ago, the bowling alley used to bring in the pros. Yes. And we used to build a pro-am, and I got to bowl with, the great ones at my time, the Weber, what was his name? Weber and Voss and these guys, and to know that we're on the same names, like we're teamed up together to beat somebody else. But that's what it's like to have these pros that you only saw on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon on TV. Hey, now you know who the daughter is or the wife. You knew more than what you saw on TV. And those are the stories that our young golfers, or even the people who volunteered. I know my father volunteered for a few tournaments. He still got pictures of him. Tiger won his first Master. My father's in the back, walking behind him. So it's things like that you could always tell your kids, your grandkids for the rest of your life.
Yeah. They're still looking for volunteers, so that's one way to make sure that you're inside the grounds, possibly inside the ropes, and being able to have a conversation with one of these guys, and it opens it up. It opens the door up for many different things. Also announced, and these two events will overlap, was the Gold Cup yesterday. The Gold Cup of sailing, because we're going to get to the Gold Cup of football. We're going to hopefully, be joined by the CONCACAF president, Mr. Victor Montagliani. He has been very busy today with the announcements, but we'll get to Victor. If he doesn't join us, he has promised he will get to his interview with me before the night's out. So for those that were waiting for Victor, if he doesn't join us on this show, we will have him sometime after. But Gold Cup sailing will take place in the Hamilton Harbor, October 26th to October 30th, and the golf actually overlaps that because the golf finishes November 1st. So we're going to have two major events. One, if you can't get to, because of the restrictions at Port Royal, you can get a spot along the harbor somewhere and actually see some top-class Gold Cup sailing. It's match racing. It's exciting at times because of the conditions in the harbor. You never know where the wind's going to come from. It can end up swirling around, and some of the sailors call it one of the toughest events that they face every year. Although spectacular, it can be challenging at times just on that water.
Yeah, I mean, folks might go back to the America's Cup, but I mean, like you said, if you're out on the water, you're next to these guys, and you hear the teams, shouting and this and that. I mean, your adrenaline pumps up. I'm pretty sure on the boat next to it. Okay, what is it? I mean, no, it's that competition on the water, and to have some of the top sailors around the world that continue to come to our island to we get to witness once again. It's a pleasure. Once again, through COVID, I'm just glad that this was another event that we actually can have. I mean, it was looking doom and gloom about 3 months ago if any one of these events was going to happen, because we didn't know what was going to happen as far as the protocols. Obviously, once again, these guys have felt they're secure enough for them to come, and probably not only come, but also bring their families. If you look at, and I was a bit worried with sailing because of the social distancing, so somewhat within a boat. You really can't, it ain't gonna be 6 feet or somebody's overboard. But obviously, I'm pretty sure they're taking all the protocols that how they can actually manage that. And the testing, we have one of the strictest testing regimes, especially over this side of the world. So hopefully we can continue that. Everybody comes away safe. But not only that, we have some good match racing.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to that. They've had some memorable years of match racing. I can recall some years ago where they had to stop one complete day because lightning struck two of the boats and sailors were injured. Those are the type of things that happen in racing in a sailboat, because once the weather moves in, people might think, okay, well, the wind's up, so they could actually sail. Not those boats. They're a bit too big to be maneuvering around in certain types of wind conditions, and especially again in the Hamilton Harbor when it starts to swirl around. It's very difficult to control those one design boats, which those guys basically have a day to get familiar with, and the next day you're out there racing, and it's all for money. $100,000 on the line. Jay, you and I need to get into a boat and see if we can get $5.
We ain't going far, bro. Unless you get out the kick, we ain't going far. We be taking on water all day.
All I gotta do is let me re and do the rest, man. Put the sails up and let me re and do the rest, man. It's one of those.
I'll tell you that.
A couple announcement was made today with CONCACAF saying, what's that?
So I'll tell you my sailor story.
CONCACAF making the announcement that.
Go ahead. CONCACAF making the announcement.
Yeah, we'll leave our sailing. CONCACAF released today that they will be having the Gold Cup draw on the 28th of September. But the good thing is that Bermuda have qualified for their second consecutive Gold Cup. We will be in the preliminary draw this time around. They've also thrown in a surprise where Qatar will play in the 2021 and 2023 Gold Cup as well. So there's been an agreement with the Asian Football Association and CONCACAF. They have an MOU, and basically one of the reasons why they've invited Qatar in is to keep that exposure, because the World Cup will be in 2022 in Qatar, and 2026 is in the CONCACAF region. So building that relationship together, CONCACAF and Qatar and the Asian Football Association have basically kind of worked together to see if they could strengthen those ties. Qatar has already played over in South America. They played in the South American Cup with Brazil, Chile, Peru, Paraguay, and Uruguay, and those guys. So they'll get an opportunity, and they're Asian champions as well. So they'll get an opportunity, and obviously we'll get an opportunity to see just how tough they are. Once those preliminary draws are made, come end of this month. So international football is what's that?
I'm biased. Look at licks. I'm biased. I don't care who you are.
Well, international football obviously is making a return. I do want to get an opportunity to speak with the president about the FIFA window for October and November. Obviously, there has been some concerns expressed by CONCACAF nations about playing matches this early with still so much uncertainty in several countries about this pandemic. Just looking at it early, I know we talked about the draw last week, but looking at the possibilities of having to play these games, we would have to go through the United States unless we got a private, but the same thing would have to happen for Suriname coming to Bermuda, and the like. So, your thoughts on the possibility of the FIFA window not being used this time around?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't think of it that way, but that might have to. And I'm not even saying so much Bermuda. Isn't Canada? The borders are pretty tight right now. and
Yeah.
each other in our group, teams got to go to Canada, right? Yeah. So well, some teams might have to go through United States to get to Canada. So, and we know that right now that's not possible. So, man, that's got to be, I believe I don't know if Homeland Security is involved with that, but it's got to be. Ooh, I would hate to make those decisions because once again, it's not just one or two people that we're talking about traveling. These. I mean, the last team that came here, how many was in that tour party last time they came here?
Well, let's look at the Mexico team because they were the biggest team to come.
Okay,
to me.
Mexico.
I think they had a total of 52 people in that region.
There you go. 52.
Yeah, they had two teams.
So once again, you're gonna need
coaches, manager, doctor.
52 people getting there's tests, and it's the 8-day cycle basically, and then the results back in, and then we gonna put them. It's woo! I would hate to have that headache right now. And I mean, we got to look at that, even for the teams that are coming here, where they're going through, because once again, nobody wants to get shut down. Nobody wants to get shut down.
Yes.
And everybody's got to take these precautions. So, and then what's the cost compared to the risk? And that cost and risk factor it plays a big role in this. So, not to have it in this window. I mean, time could be on your side. But then if you don't have it this window, I mean, then wouldn't it be you're basically kicking the can down the road?
Yeah, I suspect that they won't play the first two windows. That's my thought on the whole situation. They won't play.
Well, you would say it would skip the whole window and play the next window or the following window.
Yeah, I could see them waiting until the new year to give countries because we're talking football, but countries are talking lives of their citizens. Yeah. So that's the big thing that I think
it'd be hard to make a life decision over sports like that. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would love to see the games played, but realistically, if something went wrong, the government, wherever they are, will be their people will turn against them right away because, like I said,
the risk reward is just
yeah. I mean, we take chances every day in life, but to actually open the door for something that you can't see to actually become a cancer in the country.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate. Do we look at the country itself to see what their status is with their cases before the team comes? So let's say if a country that has very low cases, obviously they'll probably be on the low risk side, but then you might have a country that has high cases.
Yes, and we do have that. We have Suriname who have over 1,000, and you have Cayman that is down, but they haven't opened their borders yet. They're not planning to open their borders until early October. So
I wonder why.
Yeah. So how does that? What does that look like in a sense that they're doing all they can to prevent a incoming spread as opposed to a local spread. So having people come from another country opens the door up for another challenge that we've seen Jamaica have to dress back. They were allowing people in freely. Come to Jamaica, have a good time, and then they had a big problem. Obviously, Trinidad now it's mandatory that you have to wear a mask in public because they had a massive outbreak. But theirs was a local one after their elections, because obviously people not wearing masks were allowed to go and vote and do a whole lot of stuff. And it's one thing that we have to be careful about come October 1st. It's election time in a lot of places, and the government will have to be, straight up with people, and even the opposition is going to have to be straight up with their people as well, and express that if you're not feeling well, if you have any symptoms, stay home, only because although it's your right to vote, it's also everybody else's right to live. So, you have to be cautious on those two things.
Getting back to your initial question, I think you've convinced me. I think we probably should skip this at least the first window.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Mr. Montagliano has to say once I get a chance to speak with him and get some insight on the Gold Cup first, and then obviously we'll be talking about the World Cup, because everybody wants to be and get that opportunity to play in the World Cup too. So, having that under your belt as a player in any sport, anybody in track and field wants to go to the Olympics. Anybody in cricket wants to go to the World Cup. Anybody in football wants to play in a World Cup. Whether it's a qualifier, you can't take it away from someone. They actually played in a World Cup qualifier, not actually the World Cup, but it's satisfying to know that you played somewhere along the way. And to that, they're in CONCACAF, they're increasing the amount of football that you're playing, because remember, for years and years and years, we played one qualifying game or a handful of qualifying games every 4 years, and internationally that was it. But now we see the influx of games and matches that actually help produce what we were able to do last year in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, and that's something we know for years and years, that as a country we were almost begging for our region to get more games. How can we overcome? Yes, we are. They try to lump us in with the Caribbean, but we do stand alone, and the cost factor to get teams here and to have these games here is becoming very expensive. So to have these games how we're having them now, these guys got to be loving. They were born the right time, because I remember Kyle and these guys. They wish they would have played. Kyle and Sean Goodall wish they would have played a lot more games with top competition. But if you remember, one point in time, did it even make sense coming home?
Yeah.
And you remember we had a hard time getting our professionals home to play, because the risk reward. I keep saying the risk reward, but that's what it was. When these guys are fighting for their spots in the teams, in the professional teams. But now, obviously, with those rules have changed a bit, but also the amount of games that they're getting. And you look at just some of the players who did well in the Gold Cup, they've gotten contracts out of them.
Yeah.
Out of the Gold Cup. So, that's always bodes well for us.
It's come that time down in the Caribbean. And we'll start off with Mr. Vernon A. Springer.
Hello, Bazen. This is Vernon A. Springer from Vasco's Media in St. John's, Antigua and Barbuda. And just giving you an update in terms of what is happening with sports in the OECS and the wider part of the Caribbean. As you know, the Caribbean Premier League is continuing, the Hero Caribbean Premier League. And you would know that that is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago behind closed doors. And it has been a very, very, very disappointing time for the St. Kitts Nevis Patriots. As you would know, the Ghana Amazon Warriors, one of the brightest stars in West Indies cricket, Nicholas Puran, scoring 100 and even 100 not out against the St. Kitts Nevis Patriots. And then when you looked at the important game, the St. Lucia Zouks versus the Barbados Tridents, where the Darren Sammy St. Lucia Zouks defended the lowest total ever in Euro Caribbean Premier League its 8th season, we say congrats to the St. Lucia Zouks. In terms of the cricket, the pitches have been, I would say, below average. And I find it very strange that the commentators don't want to say anything about the pitches, especially at the Queen's Park Oval. But barring that, I would feel that the techniques of a number of international players and West Indian players have certainly been exposed in this Euro Caribbean Premier League. The attention now goes to the Brian Lara Cricket Stadium for the next round of matches, and I'm hoping that we can be able to get some more exciting performances coming forward. But in terms of batsmen and worrying to date, in terms of some of our players, it's a worrying sign, but it was a good sign to see Nicholas Pooran and the West Indies T20 and also the ODI captain Karan Pollard scoring a smackering score in the game for Trinidad and Tobago Knight Riders. The feeling, a lot of the young players, they've got to be able to enjoy the feeling. It's all well that you can be able to bowl and you can look good in terms of batting, but in this form of the cricket, your feeling is going to have to be improved a whole lot. Your fitness levels also, that is going to have to be able to be raised up to another concern. I'm a little concerned also about the services and Kyle Tuckett not getting a stint in the CPL. I find that very, 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 very strange. And to be honest with you, I really don't like the way in which umpire Kyle Tuckett has been treated around the umpiring circles in the region, but that's another discussion. In terms of cricket in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, well, that is continuing. We see that some of the other countries are beginning in the Caribbean to open up. Barbados has got their own T20 tournament formulating all around the country, even though you have some critics who are saying that, hey, they don't think that the youngsters should be playing any T20 cricket. Well, guys, I just want to say to you that whatever sort of cricket that you're playing, be thankful to God. Because here in Antigua and Barbuda, they're still tossed up in a limbo in terms of whether the Cool and Smooth T20 tournament will be played. The West Indies women are off to England. 14 players who went to the World Cup in a disappointing turnout are traveling to England. And I listened to the media reports that this is a strong team without Anisa Mohammed going to England. I really think that Cricket West Indies need to be able to now switch on and understand that some of these players that they're picking are seriously not giving account for what they're being paid for. And that West Indies cricket, and it comes in terms of the women's program, we certainly need to come up with a plan. And we certainly don't have a plan. You could see that. I just think that we are coaching the ladies to play cricket. We can't coach the ladies to play cricket. We have to coach them to be cricketers. And the West Indies have gone off the boil when it comes in terms of women's cricket. In fact, today, as I speak to you, I don't even know who's the coach who's going to England. It's almost like a hush-hush sort of situation. And I think that the West Indies need to revamp their entire West Indies women's cricket program, put some more resources behind our grassroots program, and also our regional cricket tournament for our young girls, and put up a cycle to say, well, listen, in the next 10 years, this is what we are hoping to be able to achieve. The coaches in the Caribbean, can they do that? I question that. I personally feel that I know that the current board wants to be able to appoint people from the Caribbean. When it comes in terms of the women's program, I don't see any improvement at all coming in the not too distant future. And I feel that is something that we seriously need to address. So in terms of sports, we're in an election mode right now in the Caribbean. It's elections in Jamaica, it's elections in Bermuda, elections coming up in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In terms of the sports look like it's just getting switched under a little bit the back burner. There's been some cricket which was introduced this weekend in Montserrat, so that's a good sign. There's no cricket activity at all happening in St. Kitts and Nevis, but they're setting up to start back for football activities. So we're hoping that by the time I speak to you next week, that we'll have some more progress rate on what's happening with sports in the OECS and the wider part of the Eastern Caribbean. There's an upsurge with the coronavirus in a number of countries around. Guys, this is Vernon A. Springer. Please stay safe. Don't get reckless. Vernon Springer for Urbaz and Island Chat Sports in Bermuda, from St. John's, Antigua, for Vast Sports Media.
Hi, Earl. As usual, it's always so good to hear from you. Well, all focus is on the Caribbean Premier League game played over there in Trinidad and Tobago. Barbados Traders really breaking the hearts of the local fans as they're really struggling right now. They have lost 2 back-to-back matches, dropped from 3rd position down to 5th position, needing to get in the top 4 to advance to the semi-finals, which means that they have to win all of their upcoming matches. But of course, that has been quite a task. They've not been in the best of showing. They are the defending champions. We expected them to go and actually try to retain the title stoutly. But at this point in time, they've left us with a lot more than just thinking that we can get it done. As I said, they need to win all their matches coming up, but we do hope that the boys can fight back and really make that push to get into the semi-finals. So the Traders breaking our hearts from the cricketing end of things. However, we have a lot to cheer about because when it comes to horse racing, our jockeys are continuing to just make their stamp across the Canadian race tracks. And of course, Antonio Whitehall, he's over at Century Mile, and he is on top of the standings with 43 wins, having secured a triple on Sunday's race card. He has 43 wins from 125 starts, and that leaves him 19 wins ahead of his nearest rival. So Antonio Whitehall, they call it Swagger as a nickname. He has been leading the charge when it comes to our international jockeys. Also having some good news to report, the Caribbean Chess Blitz online competition was actually won by a Barbadian, FIDE Master Justin Blackman. That should be FIDE Master Justin Blackman. Justin won the online blitz from a 15-player field, and with that, he has an automatic qualification into the 2021 Caribbean and America's Cup. And he did so in fine style, actually. He won that chess blitz by gaining 6.5 out of a maximum 7 points. So he definitely put in a sterling performance to be the champion. And tomorrow, September the 2nd, the Barbados Olympic Association will be holding its annual elections. The AGM will be held, not annual, every 4 years, I should say. They'll be holding their elections, and a number of persons have been making their final push to the various federations to get a shoe in on the board of directors for the Barbados Olympic Association. Of course, elections are held in conjunction with the end of the Olympic Games, but of course this year it being a bit different because the Olympics were actually postponed, has left federations with the associations, Olympic associations across the world with the consideration of having the AGMs this year or waiting until next year. And the Barbados Olympic Association has decided to keep in the rotation of 4 years and have their general elections. So the annual general meeting is set for tomorrow, and we just look forward to see if we have a return to office for many of the board directors, including the president of the BOA, which is Sandra Osborne. So basically that's it from Barbados. Sports is, as I said, at this time it's usually winding down for the year, but we still have some things to cheer about. Horse racing is still in full effect. We have cricket, of course, ongoing at the Caribbean level, the regional level, as well as local as well. The local T20 competition from the Barbados Cricket Association is now into, I think, series number 3. So they're into stage 3 of that series. And then, of course, we had some wins, some major wins in horse racing and in chess. So that's it from me. And I do send all the blessings over to you, Ingrid.
Well, Jay, one thing's for sure, Vernon A. Springer don't bite his words.
No, he doesn't. I love Vernon A. Springer. But let me tell you something. I was very surprised because he was actually pretty nice to our Trident. Him and Anne-Marie Burke were very, very, very nice about that. I don't know if you saw that match against the Zooks.
Oh yeah. The 92 runs.
He mentioned it, but did you know what this at one time? Did you know what the score was?
Oh yeah, they were 70 or what for one?
They were 27 for 8.
Chasing or
that's what they posted. Initially, because they posted.
right.
They were 27. No, guess what? So was I would say the Amazons against the Amazons. The Amazons beat them by 8 wickets, but they were
Right.
27 for 8. Now you've got West Indian players. You got okay. Let's start with the captain, Jason Earl. I'm pretty sure you heard of Johnson Charles before. What about Shy Hill? That's Ricky, right? West Indian, right?
Shy and the team had no hope.
Yeah. Ashley Nurse. You heard of him too, right?
Yeah.
They were all out before 27 runs were on the board. Now, they made a miraculous recovery and ended up with 92 runs.
Yes.
No thanks to them. No, but that's 2020. And that's why when I hear locals complaining about the game, I was like, look, it's just one of those days that it can happen. You see test sides get knocked down for 60 and 70. I mean, the England and whoever. I mean, that's how cricket is. So it doesn't matter what format it is in. If you get an open bowler who just has this spell, I mean, you can literally take the game away. I watched the end of the last Pakistan and England game the other day. And
Pakistan won?
Yeah, but England was basically in control up until about the last 3 overs.
Yeah. Well, it was a role reverse from the first match because Pakistan were in total control until about the last 3 overs. And then it all changed. It all fell apart. But this time they were able to keep it under control. I mean, get it back under control.
Even the second last ball, the guy hit well. He basically he served up a sixth. So they needed 12 runs off of 2 balls, and he got 6 off the. So I was like, woo! But no, see, once again, Earl, competition. I watched that even in NBA last night with the Utah Jazz and Denver Nuggets. Competition, especially when it's the last elimination game or whatever. Sometimes people just crack under pressure.
Yeah.
So I don't care whatever you're playing, and these are, like I said, these professional guys say, well, how do they miss a 2-footer, a layup?
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Pressure.
Overthinking it.
Why are you taking a shot where you just have to run up the clock? Pressure.
Yeah.
So I was waiting today to hear from Mr. Springer to see if he was going to go in depth with that situation. Springer, I'm going to listen next week.
I think he's warming up to the fact that he's got to get real and got to get serious about how some of the West Indian players are playing in this particular game, because they should be the ones standing out. But you had a valid point where if you get a bowler that is on and very difficult to get away in this form of the game, you could find yourself in deep trouble inside the first 10 overs with 5 guys back in the pavilion.
I've been disappointed with some of these West Indian, the West Indian players. It's not when they got out; it's how they got out.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen I mean, we saw this in the series against England. When they're playing strokes, they're playing, but they don't manage the game. They don't. It feels like they're making these rash shots at the worst time possible. If your team is struggling, I'm gonna go out there. Somebody's bouncing me something short. I'm going after it, man. Right. Check you later.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's the type of shots that they're playing, and it's like, whoa. But I guess I think West Indies have bigger troubles with the women's side, and unfortunately, because they have some very talented cricketers in that side, and they see that program not live up to the expectations.
Yeah, a lot of work has to be done. But talking about cricket, and let's come back to the local front about cricket. Last weekend, we had a lot of rain interrupting games, especially in the first division where you had the playoffs have begun. The Premier Division will go into their last 2 weeks of play. It got very interesting up at White Hill on Sunday, where Southampton Rangers and Somerset took to the field. Somerset looked as if they were in total control of the match, 108 for 6 after 13 overs of sorts. Most of the big bats were back in the pavilion with Gennaro Tucker at the wicket. And you know he can get explosive at times, but the rain came. And then after a revised and Duckworth-Lewis system, Somerset were chasing a modest total in, well, when I say modest total, when you have the form in which Kamal Levrock and Chris Douglas have been in of late, the overs, 5 overs to get 40-odd runs. You know, the first couple of games they played, they had 50 in 3. So, you know, it was always going to be an uphill battle, no matter who bowled for Southampton Rangers, because when you're in that type of nick, it's very difficult to tie someone down, and it was clearly that just happened on the day. But let's talk a little bit about a scenario. Had Somerset not withdrawn from that first game, you would have possibly had a, if not 3-way tie.
Yeah.
They would have been out front with their run rate, you know. But in order for them to win the league now, they will need a lot of help.
Mm. Well, I just think, put it this way, we can say if, what if, but what if Kamal Levrock didn't come back?
Well, that's true.
They won't be in the position at all. So we can play this if game all day.
Got a point. Got a point.
What if teams played the older seniors? You know, so I just think at the end of the day, it's been competitive. It's been entertaining. I'll put it that way. It's been entertaining to see what Levrock and I mean, what's probably more exciting, well, more surprising to a lot of people, the likes of Chris Douglas actually took a back seat.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview the other day. It's like, he's been the one who's normally been the aggressor, and he's just, I'm just, you know, when you need me, call me when you need me. I'm here, but just, you know.
You know what's funny? Since their first outing as partners, Kamal has banged the ball around, so Chris has been a spectator just like everybody else. The only difference is he paid $5.
Well, I'm really just going to throw this out there. Ooh, imagine if they open up a cup match together. Ooh.
Both Ducks.
You will want that happen because the Georges too.
Both Ducks.
That short boundary in St. George's.
Sure, both Ducks.
Man, you've got it on your site. He was mishitting boundaries.
Yeah.
And that was at White Hill.
Yeah, well, not to worry.
Actually, I would say because we heard Springer talk about the quality of the pitches down there. You've been to a lot of the matches. What do you think with the short amount of time our clubs and groundsmen had to prepare a lot of our wickets, how do you think our wickets have fared?
I believe the wickets have played well. As you said, some of the guys making some of these shots have been atrocious at times. You know, as Springer will say, and as you have said, you know, when you come in and your team's in trouble, you might want to put your head down and settle down a little bit, but you're still seeing guys being aggressive. And the unfortunate thing is that they're letting themselves and their team down. But the wickets, I mean, if you look at the amount of runs that have been scored up Somerset, look at the amount of runs that have been scored in St. George and St. David's and at White Hill. I mean, the runs have been plentiful by both First Division and Premier Division teams. So I don't think it's too much of the wickets. I just think that some guys just don't apply themselves at the correct time to go on and build an inning. If you look at, we'll use the youngster Dominique Subir. He's scored a half century almost every weekend. Look at Kamal Levrock. Other than last weekend, he scored a century or half a century, at least a half a century, every outing he's been out. So, you know, you start looking at those type of numbers, and they've betted on all 4 wickets.
Mhm.
You know, so it's not like you can say it's actually the wicket. It's how they're applying themselves, and there are times. Yeah.
Application is basically what we're saying when it comes to that. And I want to go back to that game. You're talking about the Tridents. So I did mention there was what, 7 for 27 in trouble. But how did they end up with 92 and battled out all the overs?
Right.
Somebody came in and implied themselves. And our main goal now is just to bat out the over and see what they come up with. And I've been saying this for weeks after weeks. You do not, especially when you're playing to any match or any overs match, you do not want to leave any overs on the table.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, you want to leave no overs on the table. And then you see where you are and try
it actually helps you in the long run with your run rate, your strike rate.
Exactly.
Because that could be the difference. That could actually be the difference in you finishing first, second, or third. If you bet out the 20 overs, remember you got not outs in there, so obviously that builds, and although it just all adds up, and you see, well, we don't see too many of the thinkers of the game anymore. I'm always one that always looks at the end of the over. What do the 2 batsmen do? 9 times out of 10, they stand down and they stand in their crease and wait for the bowler to bowl, sort of thing. They're not going together, looking at the scoreboard, calculating overs or calculating bowls, calculating runs. Where do we see? Because when you're the non-striker, you see a lot of gaps. When you're on strike, you're concentrating more on other things. So you might be at the non-striker's end and say, "Earl, the onside, everybody's on the boundary. So if you hit it inside the circle, we're going to get 1. We could possibly get 2 until they change the field. So let's just dub the ball down and get what they're giving us for now." And as long as you keep rotating the strike, the runs are coming on the board, and eventually when they look up, they realize, oh, that's 6 are over. And 1 bad ball, now you're 10 are over. You know what I mean? So those are the type of things that when guys get together in the middle at the end of the over, they should be discussing how they're going. What's the plan for the next 6 balls? Who's bowling?
Yeah,
gotta have a plan.
It's very seldom we see batsmen right now actually dictate to the bowler where he wants to bowl.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about. I see players when you have a fielding side says, you know what, this guy's coming, he likes to hit big, so we're gonna put these guys on the boundary. So that guy's still trying to go for the boundary. It's like, okay, let's show you where we want you, but the fielding side is actually dictating to the batsman.
Right.
It's gonna be interesting you mentioned it, because if everything stays the way it's going or heading the way it's going now, that last weekend, and that's what, 2 weeks away, that last weekend is be very interesting, like you said, because you can probably have, let's say for right now, it looks like something's looking on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
If these 3 teams come away victorious this weekend, all right, so you're going to have Southampton Rangers play St. David's in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they play on the last day. You mentioned something. The run rate, all those different scenarios. So all these different things that you can do throughout the game to increase it or decrease it. All these things will be preached throughout the game by the coaches to keep abreast of what we need to do, what we ain't done, and trying to keep abreast of. All these things will be played out with the coach of St. David's, Ricky Bregman. Yes, he will be preaching to the elder statesman of St. David's. Now, Ricky Bregman came from where? Rangers. So these guys already know, Dion and Janera, those guys know all these calculations. They know how this game works, like when it comes down to that. Because I believe in one year, did they lose by? Did they lose? No, Willicotts lost. It was the 1 year I think they didn't even lose the game, but lost the season through run rate.
Run rate, yeah.
Yeah. And once again, the other team just outplayed them just outplayed them. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, what has been interesting, though, Jay, St. David's has actually gotten stronger because you see the inclusion of George O'Brien into the team.
Wow.
Obviously, Ricardo's back. Derek is the leading wicket taker in the league. Justin Pitcher is doing his all-round thing. You know, Dean Simons is getting them off to good starts.
Ryan Ho's doing good with bat and ball.
Yeah. So, I mean, Southampton Rangers have those explosive guys. And it should be a very entertaining atmosphere because remember, Alan Douglas played with St. David's last year. Obviously, the Rangers guys are playing against their former coach. So it should be quite a spectacle on that final day. You know, and again, it's unfortunate that Somerset are on the outside looking in, but it'll be interesting if one of those two teams lose this weekend. Okay, because I know Somerset will be anxious to find out what those two teams would have done at the end of Sunday. Well, Rangers play on Saturday; they play St. George, so there'll be a lot of eyes on that one, and many Somerset fans will be rooting for St. George.
That game will be done early. that. Unfortunately, see, you mentioned three bowlers. You mentioned three bowlers in St. David's, and at least two of those bowlers, if you average them out, what they've been going for in the 4 overs, they'll barely be giving up 15 runs. George O'Brien's been barely giving up 10 to 15 runs. Derek Brown was in one game is probably giving up over 20 runs.
Right.
And you bring Brian in picking up wickets, and then Justin, the captain. So if you limit teams where they're not only got to focus on 1 or 2 bowlers to make all your runs, woo! And that's, you remember, they've won the league a few years because of their bowling and likes of George O'Brien. I tell people all the time, he's nowhere the intimidation bowler we saw many years ago. I'm going to say many years because it feels like that way. But he's a lot better bowler now because, like Gennaro Tucker, he has so many different bowls that he can bowl and bowl accurate. And he's always got you get Malachi Jones, another one, always got you thinking. Mind you, I don't think Malachi wants to see Lavrock again this year. I don't think he wants. I'm pretty sure he's glad he plays for us in cup match because, boy, he has a lot to Malachi.
I honestly believe in that last game, if it comes down to Rangers and St. David's that last week, it will be, if St. David's win, it'll be a performance from George O'Brien. And if Rangers win, it'll be a performance from Gennaro Tucker. That's my prediction.
I'll put it this way. Well, I agree with you, sort of. For St. David's to win, they have their bowling's got to be on. And for Rangers to win, their batting has to be on. Yeah. Shannon Rayner and Malachi, these guys up there. I mean, the batting lineup, if that batting lineup fails, they will fail. Mm. And that's not to say that, I mean, even Charles Trott's made runs. But the youngsters, the Rangers have bowling, they've done well.
Nairobi won't be there. He's going back to school.
He's going back, right? That's the open bowler. So young Theo Smith, is he?
Yeah.
He's done well this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been consistent. I'm going to say that it's been consistent. Gennaro will always be Gennaro. It's going to be interesting. I think when it comes to the bowling department, Dion will always be Dion. I think the thing with Rangers will be who will be that other person. Will it be Lamont Bregman? Yeah. You know, what type of day will he have? Because he can have a really good day, then he can have a really bad day. But I think their strength is in batting, and in St. David's, their strength is in their bowling. I look at St. David's side, their top 4 or 5 batsmen do not scare me at all. At all. So it's going to be interesting how that works when you look at Rangers' top 5, 6. Shannon Rayner, and I'll go through Malachi in there, Trey, Alan Douglas, Gennaro, Charles Trott. That's a lineup for you, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, like I said, with St. David's, Dean Simons has batted well this year. Justin Pitcher has had a couple of good knocks. Brian Holes had a couple of good knocks. George O'Brien yet to see any really good knocks from George, which you really know is capable of hitting. But it'll be interesting how their batting is going to fare against Rangers bowling. And I just hope and pray, realistically, that doesn't come down to the weather like this week, because you would hate to the end of the season be decided on, the Duckworth Lewis system. It's so hard for a lot of these teams to calculate as you're going through. I mean, for Somerset Doon, they have to get 40 runs the other day. It's like, ooh, these guys can get this with ease. So, been interesting. The other thing I've liked over the last few weeks, and I say this, is the under-19s. With the youngsters, Dominic Sabir, I've seen him also making runs in the evening league. And even if the evening league playing on the concrete, but these guys are getting the games in. I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of our players do not do is play enough cricket. We hear that with the guys in football is playing enough games. I think, some may feel that they're playing in a lower division or a lower competition, but the fact is these guys are playing, and I think confidence builds well with everything. You've seen Dominic, you told about Dominic Sabir earlier, but much of half centuries he's scored. But I think that's just confidence. The other youngsters, you're talking about the other youngsters, Logan Jones, the young bowler from Flats, Shane Robinson, the captain Gerard, the youngster from Somerset, Proctor. So these guys are playing maybe 2 matches a week. At least 2 matches a week, and sometimes 3 if they're playing through the evening league. They're playing on the Saturdays for the under-19s, and then they're playing Sunday for their club teams. Hey, it's not much, they're getting the games in, so it bodes well for the national program. So I don't know. Hopefully we have a good weekend, and we will see after this weekend. Now, it looks like we've lost Earl. I don't know if we said too much about his Georgia's team, but I guess we might as well just end the show. So from all of us at Island Stats, hope you guys have a good week, and we'll be back next week with more of the Island Stats Sports Show.